It speaks to the whole environment of fear that those in power, these elitists in power, have fomented to where people are afraid to speak the truth.
Dude, she's a buzzword machine. The elitists, the cabals, the woke moralists. Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard. So, I have never, ever been that much of a fan of Tulsi Gabbard. Her homophobic past has been something I haven't looked upon with great favorability. I didn't like her statements on trans people in sports, and I never liked her stance on the Assad regime. I remember her playing ads talking about America's terrible interventions within the Middle East, and she literally was showing footage of barrel bombs dropped by Assad. I could go in a little bit more depth to talk about what I didn't like about her. Most recently, I didn't like her stance on Ukraine, which I thought was very, very bad, about us not supporting Ukraine and allowing Russia to fill up mass graves filled up with Ukrainian bodies. And she could say that's not her intention, but that's ultimately what would happen. If you take away the tools that a nation needs in order to stop these atrocities from being done to it, if you take away the weapon that somebody is using to defend themselves, you cannot be surprised when people look upon you with disdain in reference to the damage done to said person. Anyway, she has apparently left the Democratic Party. This is not new news. I'm actually missing this by quite a lot. This happened 8 days ago. Tulsi Gabbard says she can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that is now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, actively working to undermine our God-given freedoms, and I think she puts a bunch more replies, are hostile to people of faith, spirituality, yada, 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 yada. She left the Democratic Party, okay? Let's listen to her clip. I don't want to read every single thing. Let's let her say it, okay? Let's listen.
Remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
This is pathetic. I don't really know what else to say about it, but the thing is, she went from campaigning for Bernie Sanders to campaigning, I shit you not, after making this speech, for Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake, for those of you who do not know, Carrie Lake is an election denier who she went from this to this. Carrie Lake is an election denier who believes that Donald Trump won the 2020 election, lies about it, therefore undermining our nation's trust in a democracy, the same conspiracy theory that led to the violence on January 6th. So I am not going to hear this lecture from Tulsi Gabbard about divisiveness and, oh, the left in this country is dividing everybody up. It's so bad how divisive they are. You know, those woke warmongers. I hate it when they're so divisive towards people of faith. Those monsters. Anyway, those woke warmonger monsters, totally not divisive, by the way. I would not be with them. I'm going to go support Carrie Lake, one of the least divisive people in the country, who totally isn't divisive and calls all of her opponents pedophiles and liars and thieves, and denies the results of a democratically decided election. Because I'm Tulsi Gabbard and I care about unifying people. That's why I went and supported Carrie Lake for governor. So I could like go one by one. When she talks about, I mean, we could talk about like the principles she had when she supported Bernie. What about the drug war stance that she said she had? She's jumping from the Democrats over towards supporting Republicans. What is the Republican stance on the drug war? They're pro-drug war. They're pro-criminalizing marijuana. They're pro-throwing people in prison for non-violent drug use. We see Joe Biden stepping in the right direction with the release of 6,000 people who were arrested on the federal level for smoking marijuana. Those people are going to be freed. They're going to be lowering the, what's the word for it? Going to be lowering the schedule status from Schedule 1. We're seeing him encouraging state governments across the country to release their nonviolent drug offenders. We're seeing the decriminalization of marijuana usage. Hopefully in the near future, we'll see the legalization of marijuana usage. She's jumping in the party that's headed in the other direction, that's constantly trying to undermine Biden's ability to do this. She talks about warmongers. To be very clear, she's jumping to Carrie Lake, somebody who supported Donald Trump, somebody who greatly increased the amount of drone strikes we were doing throughout the Middle East and throughout the world, and then restricted the information we could access on those drone strikes. By the way, Tulsi Gabbard on multiple occasions has advocated for an increase of drone strikes in places like Syria, as she's going around pointing at everybody, calling them warmongers, because they would support Ukraine. That's another thing. Somebody who's talking about, you know, their need to drop the divisiveness is perfectly willing to divide up Ukraine, give up large swaths of territory to the Russian government, where mass graves are going to be filled up with the bodies of Ukrainians. This is not This is not me being hyperbolic. This is not me being exaggerative. I'm not exaggerating. We have seen mass graves in Lyman. We saw mass graves in Bucha, and we just saw the largest mass grave uncovered in all of Europe since the Yugoslav Civil War in the city of Bucha. And the city of Izium, with 447 bodies in one mass grave alone. And she says she wants to prevent nuclear war. What do you think is a more sustainable system to prevent nuclear war? By allowing Russia's threats to break the nuclear taboo, to intimidate the world, to give him large swaths of territory in Ukraine, guarantee Ukraine cannot join an alliance structure that will protect it in the future, and screw over Ukraine, sending the message to the world, to Kim Jong-un, to the Sudanese government, to the government of Myanmar and the Tatmadaw, to the government of Eritrea, to the government of Ethiopia, to the governments of the world, to the government of Israel, to the government of Iran, sending this message to every government in the world, of Egypt, that all you need to do to consolidate your gains in the country you've invaded isn't build a sustainable future or even win the war. You could lose the war, but if you have nuclear weapons, just threaten to use them, and the whole world will go to the victim and say, sorry, you need to be genocided. You need to be wiped off the face of the earth. You need to give up your territory because they threw a fit and they have bombs. When we lost the war in Vietnam, we left Vietnam. When the Soviet Union lost the war in Afghanistan, they left Afghanistan. When we lost the war in Afghanistan, we left Afghanistan. When the Bay of Pigs failed, we had to bite it. We didn't take our nukes and end the world. But Tulsi Gabbard is perfectly willing to sell out Ukraine in order to make a quick buck grifting with people like Carrie Lake. It's honestly pathetic. It's very pathetic. For somebody who signed up for military service, said they're a veteran, for God's sakes, being willing to take our nation's values and constitution and rip it up if it means serving the interests of the Kremlin. And I know that might sound like I'm exaggerating, but that is what she's doing, as she's undermining this young democracy that's trying to protect itself from a foreign power invading and trying to recolonize it. She is doing the opposite of what the French did for us during the Revolutionary War. Anyway, I could complain endlessly about, you know, the statements of wokeness or any of the million reasons why I don't like this statement or the reason she like pulled out of the Democratic Party. Or how anti-white racism being a major issue for you to the point that we leave a political party is absolutely ridiculous when you talk about the United States, where white people have a higher income on average, have higher wealth on average, generational wealth and just wealth in general, on average have higher paying jobs, live longer. I mean, I could go into detail, and you're going to seriously stand here and say that anti-white racism was one of the main motivating factors for you to leave a political party. It is ridiculous. What is the huge sin that white people face in this country that's going to push you out of the Democratic Party? Anyway, I could go endlessly into this, but Tulsi Gabbard kept going. Obviously, she announced she was going to go endorse Kari Lake, the anti-democracy advocate in Arizona. And then she went on, of course, immediately to go on Tucker Carlson's show to talk about her decision on leaving the Democratic Party. Let's listen to what she had to say on Tucker's show.
Tulsi Gabbard joins us tonight, and we're happy that she is. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for coming on. That was quite a statement. I'm listening to this, and I'm thinking, you know, we have Republicans on the show from time to time. They don't put it as clearly and bravely as you do.
Brave.
So how do you feel? I mean, you've been in this party a long time. You were its future. You left. I mean, this has got to be kind of a fraught moment for you.
I mean, she wasn't its future. I mean, she got like less than 1% in the Democratic primary in 2020. I think calling her the future of the Democratic Party, I think, a bit of an exaggeration.
And, you know, Tucker, as you know, I've always been an independent-minded person, a Democrat, yes, but an independent Democrat. And my loyalties are very clear. I love our country. And I took an oath, both as a service member, as a soldier, as well as a member of Congress, to support and defend the Constitution. And that's an oath that I take extremely seriously. And so when you look at this party, the today's Democratic Party, it's controlled by fanatical ideologues who hate freedom. They despise the Constitution. They actively find ways to undermine our God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution.
You know, when I signed up to be a Democrat, I was worried that our anti-freedom policies were not going hard enough on the Constitution. But I'm happy to see that, you know, people are respecting the anti-freedom work we engage in here at the Democratic Party on a daily basis. So I'm happy that our hard work and making sure that we kick enough babies and ban enough books and, you know, destroy this country is being recognized by such a powerful advocate in Tulsi Gabbard. I think the anti-freedom lobby in the Democratic Party has lost influence over the last years. It went from like 99% of Democrats hating freedom to like 97%. But I'm happy that Tulsi Gabbard respects our hustle.
Like freedom of speech. If you say something and I say something that they don't like, instead of saying, you know what, agree to disagree, live and let live in the traditional liberalist kind of way. No, that's not good enough. They will do all that they can to destroy you, silence you, smear you, work with big tech, work with corporate media to actively destroy anyone who dares to even question their agenda.
Everything she just said just perfectly described Donald Trump and the MAGA movement as well. The thing is, there's cultural power in this country. The left has a lot of it right now. The right, and many times in its history with the Dixie Chicks and of course with Trump, has a lot of cultural power as well. You could see it any time libs from TikTok calls out a hospital, and that hospital gets like 20 bomb threats immediately after. This isn't something that is unique to the left. This isn't something that is unique to the right. Anybody trying to pretend otherwise is kind of a partisan hack, if I'm being completely honest. Just because, and not to mention, like when she says they'll go after you, they'll destroy you, I don't know exactly what she means by that. Does she means that like they'll go after your job? Does she means that like they'll criticize you on the internet? Like, I don't know what she means by that when they say they're anti-free speech and they'll go after you. But yeah, the left and the right have both gone to extreme extents when it comes to going after people that politically disagree with them. And I don't think saying anything other than that really comes off anything more than like just political hackery. I mean, if this is just about getting banned off Twitter, then I'm going to be quite frank, I don't care that much.
They are against freedom of religion. They are hostile towards people of faith, people who have their own spiritual practice, especially.
How? What do you mean? With Donald Trump, okay. In 2016, the last Republican president who ruled this country ran on a policy of banning Muslims. I am calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until we can figure out what the hell is coming on. There's not a single Democratic politician, let alone one that was president of the United States in the last 20 years, who have come within 1/10 of saying something like that on national television. Doghouse, I already debated you on this.
Christians, finding ways to be vindictive, to discriminate, to punish people who happen to exercise that freedom of religion. The list goes.
Every time I see a pastor with a cross, I make sure to like pick him up by his ankles and like dangle him off the side of a building and like steal all of his lunch money as his nickels and dimes and pennies are falling out of his pockets and he's dropping his rosary beads into my comically large bank robbing bag with a big S dollar sign with lines through it. I make sure to do that every time.
Goes on, but the foundation of freedom is really what was at the heart of my making this decision, that I cannot be a member of a party that is against freedom and actively trying to undermine it.
Yes, and that is why she immediately came out and endorsed Carrie Lake, man. Out of all the politicians, she just like immediately was like, I'm no longer a Democrat, so I'm just going to support the worst of the worst when it comes to the Republican Party. This is what makes me think it's like it's not based in anything outside of just being a grifter. Because if she was like, well, you know, I was a Democrat, now I'm not a Democrat, you know, maybe I'm a libertarian now, maybe I'm supporting some more maybe the most moderate, maybe like Dan Crenshaw, kinda like maybe I can at least conceptualize that. But she ran all the way over to Carrie Lake. She ran all the way over to Carrie Lake, for God's sakes. Pro-drug war, anti-abortion, wants to restrict a woman's rights to choose, wants to ban abortion, believes the 2020 election was completely fraudulent and it was stolen from Trump. I mean, she ran to the complete other end of the spectrum. And you can't just go from, oh, I'm a reasonable Democrat to I am supporting the worst of the Republican Party like that and not expect to come off like a massive grifter.
Well, it was inspiring to hear that, but also disappointing. I mean, I feel like printing out your words and asking every Republican candidate who comes on this show to read them. And if you can't read them, I'm not voting for you. Right? I mean, why is it so hard to say out loud? First of all, the people who are always talking about racism are committing it. Why is that so hard for people to acknowledge? It's so obvious.
It speaks to the whole environment of fear that those in power, these elitists in power, have fomented to where people are afraid to speak the truth.
Dude, she's a buzzword machine. The elitists, the cabals, the woke moralists, it's just buzzword, zero substance, buzzword, zero substance, again and again and again, man. It just feels like she's reading off of a bullet points, man. This is pathetic. I'm sorry, man. I hate this. This is the worst of politics.
They're afraid to exercise their right to free speech because, hey, you might lose your job, you might be canceled, you might be trashed, and God forbid in Washington, you might not be invited to the cool kids parties. You might not be as popular. And this is really what it comes down to, is rather than taking a stand for peace, for prosperity, security, and freedom of the American people,
Dog, she wants to make the Middle East look like a giant glass crater. Let me be clear. When she talks about making, like, she wants to drastically increase drone strikes. She pretends she's a peace candidate. She isn't. She believes that Biden's drawdown of drone strikes in the last year has been a massive mistake. She just wants to be stand on peace when it comes to issues like Ukraine and standing up for democracy, not when it comes to fighting Islamic extremism in the Middle East. That is like the one issue she's like, oh no, that's a real issue. We need to blow the fuck out of that. That's part of the reason why she was really soft on Assad, because she was so scared of Hayat al-Sham. She didn't care if that brutal, murderous dictator stayed in office.
We have too many people in Washington who are warmongers, subservient to the military-industrial complex, and continuing to put their own selfish interests or the interests of their donors first, with no mind for the cost and consequence that their decisions have on the American people. This is exactly what we're seeing right now with President Biden and leaders in Congress whose decisions are actively pushing us to the brink of a nuclear holocaust, of which they may have their bunkers where they'll be safe, but we, the American people, will have no shelter, no place to go, no place to hide, and face the consequences that could destroy all of humanity and the world as we know it.
You were the first person I heard say that back in February when this all started. I believed you.
That's why I ran for president.
Well, it turns out you were absolutely right.
What do you mean? What do you mean she was right? We're fine. Look, I'm in America. I went to Ukraine. I'm fine. I'm okay. Nobody's irradiated. Oh my God, man. I can't do it. I actually can't. You can't just... If every single time there was the slightest of threat from anyone involved of nukes being used or nukes on the table or nukes in the conversation, we behaved how Tulsi is asking us to behave, then all of Europe would be led by authoritarians. There would not be a single democracy in Europe, and we probably wouldn't have a democracy in the United States, if I'm being quite honest. Because the whole thing about nuclear planning is, if you do not show a strong resistance to nuclear weapons, either through saying, hey, we got our own and we can use our own as well, if you don't, all that'll do is encourage the other nuclear powers to get more and more aggressive. Because then they've learned that all you need to do to get large swaths of territory or intimidate your geopolitical opponents from their interests is just threaten them with nukes, and then you cave. You give them everything they want because, hey, nuclear holocaust, scary word, scary word, scary word. I mean, who cares that the vast majority of military planners still agree that Russia's probably not going to use nuclear weapons? Who cares that they probably wouldn't even nuke the United States? That's not something that needs to be talked about. Let's not bring up the fact that it would be in Ukraine, not in America, as she's making it seem like it would be. The main victims of one of these strikes would, again, be the Ukrainians. I mean, it's just political hackery, man. This is so frustrating.
Really quick, since you did serve for so many years in the Congress, in the party you just left, you know everybody, of course. Has anyone called you today, your former colleagues, Democrats, to say anything to you?
One got in touch with me and sent me a text message with 3 thumbs up.
I would love to know who that is, but I'm glad you're influencing people. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm not going to ask you what you're doing next. We will all watch, but I hope you'll come back on the show soon. Thank you.
God, man, it's just talking point machines, man. It's just virtue signaling. All of this is just virtue signaling. God, man, you realize very quickly how, can I be for real? It is, God, how do I say this? How do I say this in the least offensive way possible? You being a veteran doesn't mean you know anything. There's so many people who use veteran status to pretend they know everything about war. Your experience as a veteran is going to be vastly different than everybody else's experience about being a veteran. If you are stocking the shelves at West Point, that's very different than somebody who flies like a Hellcat or flies helicopters or is an engineer or is a scientist for the Navy or something. all of these experiences between a submariner all the way up to a Marine, all the way up to the people who manage the logistics are going to be so vastly different that I'm really sick of people who have no experience whatsoever in this realm using it to justify their like claim of authority on the issue of something like nuclear weapons. It is extremely annoying. It is frustrating because it feels just like, look at me, I held a gun, therefore I know everything about warfare. When you really don't. Like, if she was just like, this is my opinion, that my uneducated opinion, let me be clear, all my opinions are uneducated here, okay? If she just said that, then it's like, whatever. But this idea of like, I see so many people take it out like, hey, Tulsi, you were a veteran. What do you think of Russia's use of nuclear? What do you mean she was a vet? What would she know? She's not an expert on Putin. She's not an expert on nuclear control. She's not an expert on deterrence. She's not an expert on Ukraine. She's not an expert on Russia. She's not an expert on Eastern Europe. She's not even an expert on NATO. Like, it is unbelievably frustrating to see people try to prop that up as if now she knows everything she's talking about when it comes to war. It is unbelievably frustrating. She's not even an expert on foreign policy even. True. Let's move on to the next thing. I saw that Fox News had a panel talking about Tulsi Gabbard's departure from the Democratic Party. I wanted to see what they had to say about it.
Leaving her party for good and issuing this fiery takedown ahead of the midterms.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism. I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government. Aloha. I just want to let you know, I'm starting World War III and destroying the world as we know it. Also, I will be shooting and being right now. When I was 21 years old, I fought against Americans in Vietnam. I have been arrested 50 times. There's nothing more precious than crime. I'm facing 11 years in prison for sexual harassment, and I don't care. I ran for president in 2020 because I don't know. I've forgotten. I love Call to Duty. I will erase the existence of women in a nuclear holocaust. I don't have sex. I just love war. But sex between men is hot.
True.
That is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party.
All right, let's go to Jessica Tarlov. So maybe not a complete surprise that she would have decided to leave, but she didn't announce she's becoming a Republican, but she is leaving the Democratic Party. So you're down one.
Down one. We were already down that one, and probably everybody else who's says that they're a Democrat and is supporting her online or tuning in. I think that's a part of a show that she's going to have this new, like, 30-minute shows. Tulsi Gabbard hasn't been a Democrat for a very long time, and it's not because I'm pissed off that she criticized the 2016 primary process and, you know, upset Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She has been vindictive and spiteful and angry towards Democrats. She's attacked our infrastructure. I thought certainly in the last primary, in the 2020 primary, that she would have been a lot happier if Donald Trump had ended up winning. She does things that are completely inexplicable. I'm certainly not going to sit here and say that she has any direct ties to Russia, but I don't know how you end up in a position where they refer to you as our girlfriend on Russian state TV.
You can't control that.
Yes, you can. You can control what you say.
How?
You can
go to Russia and tell them, please don't say those things?
No, you could do things like not go on television and say that what we're doing here in the U.S. in terms of the free press isn't that different from what's going on in Russia. They throw people, journalists, out windows in Russia. What happens here? Maybe you don't get to ask your question. She went to visit Assad in 2017 without telling the party leadership and came back and said that the people that she met supported him. This is someone guilty of terrible war crimes. Steve Bannon liked her so much that he had to get her a Trump Tower meeting right after he won the election. Why would Steve Bannon take such a shining to Tulsi?
Cheap.
What?
What you're trying to do, first you do it with Russia, now you do it with Bannon. It has, what you're saying is if somebody else liked...
Dude, this is the dude who hosts, I think, like, what's this guy? Oh, God, what's this guy's name? I fucking despise this guy. And I don't despise this guy because he's wrong on everything, even though he is. I despise this guy because he thinks he's funny. Yeah, Gutfield. He hosts Gutfield. It's the... I don't want to get too much into Gutfield. But I've watched it because sometimes I'm in restaurants and it'll just be on the TV. It is a agonizing experience. I actually like listening to people who disagree with me because I get to yell at this TV. I didn't even yell at the TV when he was talking. Not because I didn't disagree with him, just because it was fucking boring. It was boring. And the thing is, a show can be boring and that's okay, but it was boring when the show's intention was very clear not to be boring. That is the problem. When you're trying to host like a comedy show and it's just not hitting.
You, that's on you. I can't help it. I have some fans that can be kind of strange. That ain't my fault.
Steve Bannon isn't just kind of strange.
Well,
I'm saying if you're a Democratic official and Steve Bannon and Donald Trump think that you're aces and they want to meet with you and maybe consider you for being in the administration, you are doing something wrong.
It's not Joe Biden's fault that Joy Reid likes him. But Joy Reid is a nutcase.
Are you comparing Steve Bannon and Joy Reid?
No, I would say that I feel the same way about Joy Reid that you probably feel about Bannon.
This is the weakest possible response to everything she just said. And this is just clinching on to the Steve Bannon point. What about what she said about the journalists in Russia? I mean, like, she was fucking like machine gunning out points and Gutfield. Oh, God. This is why I don't like Gutfield, man.
What about the 75 million Americans who don't mind being connected to Donald Trump, who voted for him? Is there something wrong with them?
Some of them, like Steve Bannon.
Oh, cut it out. Oh, come on. That's not
go for the person.
Okay, let's get back to Tulsi.
Okay, let's go.
Damn, there's like one Democrat on the whole panel and she's already pissed them all off. She's already pissed them all off. She's like, oh my God, man, really? There's like, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 Republicans, 1 Democrat, and she's already pissed them all off.
Go back to Tulsi. Okay. Look, this is very interesting. We just spoke about the Democrats' vice president that they chose based on identity politics. A woman who can't get out of her own way to discuss anything which she has.
What does this have to do with Tulsi Gabbard? What? How are we on Kamala now? We're talking about identity. Kamala, can we get back to the...
Has the power. She has the ability to get things done in this country and in the world. She is a halfwit compared to other vice presidents. That's number one.
What? To what? What? No one was talking about Kamala. What? It was, whatever.
You've got Tulsi Gabbard, who put her life on the line for this country.
Oh my God, Jesus Christ. She was a veteran. Okay, good for her. Fantastic. That doesn't mean you're a good politician. Just because you can shoot a gun doesn't mean you know what you're talking about when it comes to like administrative policy.
Compared to the halfwit that we have as vice president, who can't even address the issue she's supposed to. Let me tell you.
So her stance is, so my position on Tulsi is, she was a veteran, so therefore, screw Kamala. Come on. Like, they're not even trying.
Is something. I give her credit for calling out what happened with the Democratic Party, the DNC, when Bernie Sanders was edged out by Hillary Clinton when she got the questions from what's her name, who said that we were criticizing her because she was a good Christian woman. What was her name? Donna Brazile. I mean, let's talk turkey. You want to talk turkey? Let's talk turkey. This woman.
I feel like she's kind of buying herself time. She's just kind of fumbling around. Let's talk turkey. Want to talk turkey? Let's talk turkey. I feel like she's trying to she's just grabbing all over. I will say the giving of the questions to Hillary in advance was messed up. That is messed up.
Tulsi Gabbard she is an educated, and she is far from vindictive, spiteful, and angry.
I mean, she is spiteful. She is vindictive. I don't know if she's angry.
You call her those things? I have never seen the woman.
You just called the vice president a halfwit.
She is a halfwit.
No,
look at comedy shows.
Okay.
Look at your own comedy shows.
My own? I don't own Seth Meyers.
Look, let me tell you something. Your own party.
Who watches this? I'm sorry. Who's the demographic this is for? Who watches? This is like Hippy Dippy with less guests, and they're less on topic than even Hippy Dippy was. This is like hippy dippy if we actually got like primetime cable television. This is how hippy dippy would have probably looked like, unironically. Who is this for? Who enjoys this? Dumb rednecks? I don't even think it's that.
Party makes fun of her. Your own party runs away from her. I have never seen Tulsi Gabbard raise her voice, and she put her life on the line. So,
oh my, there it is again. She was a veteran. Okay, she shot a gun. Good job.
Don't you dare criticize her.
Service.
Did you listen to her? She was a veteran, so don't you dare criticize her. Okay, is that the rule now? So I am proud to know that she will never criticize Pete Buttigieg because he also served. So if Pete Buttigieg ever becomes president or ever runs again, she's not allowed to criticize Pete Buttigieg because he served, making him an angel and a hero and a saint and the second coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. My goodness.
But because you served, it doesn't mean that you are free of criticism for the rest of your life.
I do want to play this. She was on Joe Rogan.
True. Oh my God, dude, she's rolling all of them. What is this?
Burns is an immoral.
She's actually rolling all of them. This is on Fox, right? This is on Fox News. Drone Rusher, thanks for the Prime Gaming. I appreciate it.
Talked about friendships and politics. Watch here.
Like if you're a Democrat and you decide to go on Tucker Carlson, for instance, like what is that like?
It ranges from people kind of like giving you a cynical look, like whose side are you really on, to people just outright ending that friendship or that professional relationship because they don't want to have anything to do with you.
Have you experienced that?
Over and over.
Oh, and I hate hearing that, Jesse, that politics should never end friendships, ever, but it does happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, my mother doesn't speak to me anymore. You want to talk turkey? Do you want to talk turkey?
No, I've had enough turkey.
Turkey leftovers right here.
I don't want to make this personal about Tulsi Gabbard. She has a point about how the Democratic Party is now unrecognizable from what it used to be. They're much more hawkish. They're not the party of the working man. They're the party of college graduates, elite institutions, the upper class. And
to be clear, it is the Republican Party which wants to cut large swaths of taxes for the most rich in our society, when the vast majority of working people want to see the rich taxed more so they pay their fair share, right? It is the Republican Party which passed the Trump's tax cuts with 80% of the benefits went to the top 1%, not the vast majority of working people, and those tax cuts were permanent while the tax cuts for working people were temporary. It is the Republican Party which has led the invasion to Afghanistan, led the invasion into Iraq. It was under the Republican Party that drone strikes under Trump drastically increased, and the restriction on our information on drone strikes was restricted more. The thing is, if Democrats out of all these years have decided to be hawkish on the issue of, like, I don't know, Ukraine, which is an actual moral struggle we have involved ourselves in, not like Trump's continued support for the Saudi war in Yemen, and even Biden's, to be quite fair, even though he has been less supportive, he should completely drop support for it. Yeah, I'm fine with that. At least it's on a moral struggle, which Tulsi Gabbard wouldn't know about.
And they don't talk about health care and education and jobs anymore. They talk about January 6th all day. Or they talk about gender and race. And
just listen, if you look at Joe Biden's tweets, can we look at Joe Biden's tweets? Let's see how many of them are about gender and race and how much of them are like about infrastructure or policies he's passed. Can we just go look at it quickly? 1 second. Just right now, just quickly. Joe Biden is a representative of the Democratic Party because, you know, he was elected. Let's go check it out. Americans are starting to see hearing aids on their store shelves. That's a big deal. This is in relation to an act that was recently passed that makes it so they can buy hearing aids over the counter. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, if Big Pharma tries to raise drug prices faster than inflation, they'll have to write a check to Medicare to cover the difference. Instead of that money going to drug companies, it'll go in folks' pockets in the form of lower drug prices. Student loan debt relief is a game changer for millions. We must do more to transform how we address mental health. My administration is announcing funding to certified community behavioral health clinics, centers that deliver mental health and substantive use care folks to who need it. Working people in the middle class will benefit from my administration's student loan debt relief. Not those at the top. More than 40 million Americans stand to benefit from our student loan debt relief plan. We've invested in infrastructure, jobs, lower cost manufacturing, healthcare, and we're not stopping anytime soon. Most families are focused on putting meals on the table, taking care of their kids, and paying their bills. Helping you to do that is my job. This is like policy. It is policy after policy. I'm going to be for real. I don't see many posts here about the Little Mermaid, okay? I think Joe Biden has probably been more hyper-focused on policy compared to, I would say, the average commenter on Twitter. But when you talk about the person who's supposed to represent the Democratic Party as like at the head of our party, he's been largely focused on policy. Now compare that to Trump's tweets. Okay, yeah.
It's annoying, and the bigger point that she's making is that there are a lot of insecure, snobby, cosmopolitan liberals that are dying for acceptance. So they will submit to whatever the woke language of the day is just to feel embraced by the elite institutions. And what they really are, they're useful idiots. They're being used by powerful people to shut down debate. They're being used by powerful people to say, this is what you're allowed to say and this is what you're not allowed to say, so those powerful interests can make their money and do their thing uninterrupted. They don't even realize how useful of idiots they are, but that's what they like because that gives their life meaning. Because without that, it lacks meaning.
Burns
well,
is
Tulsi will be on Tucker Carlson's show tonight.
Man.
Does anyone have any final comments?
Greg didn't talk.
Yeah, I've just been sitting here.
Well, you kind of talked. I'm sorry. Excuse
Yeah.
He did get to talk. He got to give a weak response to the base Democrat on the panel. Sneezy Shadow, thank you so much for the Prime Gaming. Hey, Dylan, love you and the work you're trying to do. I appreciate that. We're going to be releasing a new video on the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant on the main channel in the near future. Please do be subbed to Dylan Burns TV on YouTube and click the notification bell so you know when that video is released.
Yes, I did. I was yelling at Jessica.
Yes.
You know what, though? The thing is, what Jessica is illustrating and what other people, I mean, it's an obvious thing. Every opposing party loves it when somebody leaves that party. And the party that loses that person will say, good riddance. That's what you do. It's like Liz Cheney. It's like, go away. That's how I would feel. And then I think liberals would be like, she's a hero. She's a hero. It's almost like the mirror image of this.
Well,
it is.
Liz
Except
Cheney
that Tulsi
is a much more important person.
No,
than Tulsi
I would
Gabbard.
no, the opposite. Liz Cheney is running on bitterness. You want to talk about bitterness?
Yeah.
And her entire life is based on a grudge now about Trump. At least Tulsi. The thing I like about Tulsi is that
if you listen to Tulsi, everything she said was the Democrats are evil, this way, the wokeness, the evilness, the warmongers. It wasn't an affirmative. It was all against the Democrat. When he's taking like, oh, Liz Cheney was just against Trump. If I listen to Tulsi Gabbard, it's just complaining about Democrats. It's not really offering an affirmative policy. It's not offering, hey, here's my health care plan. Hey, here's my energy plan. It's all the Democrats are evil and from every single way. And here is my big list on how they're evil. And that's it. There's no proposals of like what she actually want to do is positively. I don't see that. They're as spiteful as the other person, I would say.
if she were to give you two opinions, you could not predict a third one. Right? She's the definition of an individual. I disagree with her on probably at least 30%, maybe 40% of the things. But the boxes she ticks aren't the boxes that Kamala ticks. Her boxes are achievements and ideas. That's different than skin color and where she was born. And no, not where she was born, but whatever her background is. So I think it's real. I think that is what makes her so different. I've never seen her angry in my life. No. And just lastly, I think she's going to be Trump's VP. So that's where this is going. But I do think when she said the anti-white racism, she said something that most people can't say, and that takes serious, stones to say that, because it is true. I mean, in the Democratic Party, they've made it really clear that you can be racist against white people because they have it coming. And I think that's why everybody's so.
Trump said on the campaign trail, I am calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. He called for a Muslim ban, and he was still elected president. He got away with it. Like, it's fine. You asking for a source? You want a source? You want a source? Okay, I'll get a source. You want a source? Okay.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
I've heard this quote. I remember this quote very vividly. That's why I knew it word for word. Anyway, yes, he said it. I don't know. Like, there's my source. It's Trump.